Have you ever stopped and wondered, why do we allow fear and anxiety to hold so much power over our lives? Think of a moment in your own story. Perhaps you stood before an opportunity, an interview, an exam, a conversation with someone important, and instead of stepping forward with confidence, you hesitated. Fear whispered in your ear, "What if you fail? What if they reject you? What if everything falls apart?" Or maybe on a sleepless night, your mind replayed endless scenarios of the future, things that had not happened and might never happen, yet your heart raced as if those shadows were already real. This is the nature of fear. This is the weight of anxiety. They live not in the present, but in the stories our minds tell us about the future. And here is where our journey begins. Because thousands of years ago, long before our modern world was filled with constant notifications, financial pressures, and social comparisons, there were men and women who faced the very same struggles. They too battled with fear. They too wrestled with uncertainty. And out of those struggles, they discovered a way of seeing life, a philosophy that still speaks to us across the centuries. That philosophy is Stoicism, born in the bustling streets of Athens, carried through the courts of Rome, and practiced by emperors, merchants, soldiers, and slaves alike. Stoicism is not simply abstract thought. It is a guide, a set of tools to help us navigate the storms of life. And at its core lies a truth that can free us from the grip of fear and anxiety. So let us slow down together. Let us walk step by step into this ancient wisdom. And let us see how Stoicism teaches us not only to survive fear, but to rise above it. Fear and anxiety are as old as humanity itself. They are part of our biology, woven into our very survival. For our ancestors, fear was a signal, a warning of danger, a surge of energy to either run or fight. Without fear, they might not have lasted long in a world filled with predators and uncertainty. But today, in our modern world, the threats are not always lions in the tall grass. They are often invisible: deadlines, expectations, illness, financial worries, the possibility of rejection, the uncertainty of tomorrow. Fear, in its original form, was a guardian, but in our minds it often becomes a prison. Anxiety is different, though closely related. If fear is the sudden reaction to danger, anxiety is the restless anticipation of what might go wrong. It is the mind rehearsing disasters, imagining futures that may never come, and exhausting itself with endless what-ifs. The Stoics observed this long before the modern world gave us words like stress or panic attacks. They recognized that most of our suffering does not come from the events themselves, but from our judgments about them. Epictetus, once a slave who rose to become a great teacher of philosophy, said it simply: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Pause with that thought. Not what happens, but how you respond. This is a profound shift, because if the source of our suffering lies not in the external world, but in the way we perceive it, then peace is not lost. It is simply waiting for us to reclaim it. The Stoics gave us a tool, a map to navigate fear and anxiety. They called it the Dichotomy of Control. There are things within our control, and there are things beyond it. Within our control are our thoughts, our choices, our judgments, our actions. Beyond our control are the opinions of others, the twists of fate, the outcomes of events, the weather, the economy, even the moment of our death. When we try to control what is not ours, the reactions of others, the unfolding of the future, we exhaust ourselves. Anxiety thrives in this space because the future is infinite and uncertain, and no human being can grasp it fully. But when we turn our energy inward, when we focus only on what is truly ours, on how we choose to act in this moment, then something remarkable happens. The chaos of the world does not vanish, but it loses its power to break us. Imagine standing before an audience, about to give a speech. Fear rises. Anxiety tightens your chest. The Stoic reminds you, the opinions of the audience, whether they praise you or mock you, are not within your control. What is within your control is how you deliver your words, how you breathe, how you remain true to yourself. Or imagine waiting for the results of a medical test. Your mind races, imagining the worst. Anxiety feeds on the unknown. But the Stoic asks, is the result within your control? No. What is within your control is how you meet the result, whatever it may be, with courage, with clarity, with acceptance. This is not indifference. It is not apathy. It is freedom. Freedom from being chained to what we cannot change. Why then do we still allow fear to control us? Because fear, at its root, is a distortion of time. Fear lives in the future, in the world of what if. It draws us out of the present moment and traps us in a world that does not yet exist. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, warned us of this. He wrote in his Meditations, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same reason you meet the present." In other words, the same strength that allows you to endure today will be with you tomorrow. The same breath that carries you through this moment will carry you through the next. Why borrow suffering from a future that has not yet arrived? When we learn to rest in the present moment, fear loses its sharpness. Anxiety loses its fuel. So as we close this first step in our journey, let us pause. Let us breathe deeply. Inhale. Exhale. And remember, fear and anxiety may visit us, but they are not our masters. They are signals, not sentences. They remind us of what matters, but they do not define how we must live. The Stoics give us this gift, the reminder that peace is not found in controlling the world, but in controlling our response to it. This is only the beginning. In the next lesson, we will dive deeper into the Stoic view on fear itself, how the mind creates illusions, how Marcus Aurelius and other Stoics reframed fear, and how you and I can begin to see fear not as an enemy, but as a shadow that dissolves under the light of reason. But for now, carry this truth with you. You cannot control everything, but you can always control how you choose to see and how you choose to act. And in that choice lies freedom. Yet fear has a way of disguising itself. It comes quietly, dressed as caution, as preparation, as care for the future. And if we are not careful, we begin to mistake its whispers for truth. We begin to believe that fear is unavoidable, that it is the natural master of our lives. But the Stoics remind us, fear is not as solid as it seems. It is often an illusion created by the mind. Think about it. How many of the fears that troubled you in the past ever came to pass? How many nights were wasted in worry? only to discover later that the outcome was never as dreadful as you imagined. Fear magnifies uncertainty. It turns the unknown into a monster. It creates stories about the future, stories so convincing that your body reacts as though they were already real. The Stoics saw through this. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who faced wars, plagues, and political betrayal, wrote in his private reflections, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same reason you meet the present." He understood that fear is not about the present moment. It is a distortion of what might be. The mind projects shadows on the wall, and we tremble as if they were giants. To the Stoics, the way forward is to return to the present. The present moment is where life actually happens. It is where action, clarity, and peace are possible. Fear thrives in the future, but it has no power in the now. Imagine this. You are about to stand on a stage and deliver a speech. Beforehand, your stomach churns, your heart races. Your mind paints pictures of forgetting your words, of stumbling, of people laughing at you. This is fear at work, anticipation of what might happen. But in the actual moment when you step forward and begin to speak, the fear often softens. The act itself is rarely as terrifying as the story your mind told you beforehand. The Stoics would say, this fear is an illusion. It is the mind's attempt to grasp what is not yet real. It feeds on uncertainty, but when you focus on what is present, the words you are speaking, the breath in your lungs, the task at hand, the illusion begins to fade. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to return to the present by saying, "Do not let the future trouble you, for you will come to it if you must, armed with the same reason you use today." This is not simply advice, it is an anchor. It reminds us that we do not need to solve tomorrow's problems before tomorrow arrives. We need only meet today with clarity, and tomorrow will be met the same way. This does not mean fear is worthless. Fear can reveal what matters to us. The fear of losing someone shows us that we love them deeply. The fear of failing at a task shows us that it holds meaning. But to live in fear is to misplace our energy. It is to give power to illusions instead of reality. The Stoics teach us to recognize fear as a signal, but not as a dictator. Fear can say, "This matters," but it cannot say, "You are weak." It can say, "Be prepared," but it cannot say, "You will fail." The final judgment always belongs to us. Think about the everyday moments when fear rises. You worry before a journey. You fear before taking an exam. You feel anxious before speaking to someone you admire. These fears are natural, but they are not unbreakable. A Stoic pauses and asks, what is real right now? What is within my control? And what is just an illusion of the mind? This shift is powerful. It turns anxiety before a challenge into calm preparation. It turns dread into acceptance. It turns uncertainty into an invitation to be present. Fear, left unchecked, can paralyze, but fear, understood through Stoic wisdom, can dissolve into clarity. It no longer controls you, it becomes a teacher. It reminds you to return to what is real, what is now, what is yours to act upon. And so we begin to see that fear is not the enemy. The enemy is the illusion, the false belief that fear represents reality. The truth is that reality is often gentler, smaller, more manageable than the storms we imagine. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in the stillness of his nights, if you are troubled by something external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. What freedom there is in that thought, the power to revoke, the power to take back your peace, even in the face of fear. So when anxiety stirs in your chest, when fear whispers in your ear, remember, it is not the event itself that crushes you. It is the judgment. It is the illusion. And illusions fade when seen clearly. Pause with me for a moment. Breathe. Inhale slowly. Exhale gently. Feel the weight of your body in this present moment. Here, right now, fear has no hold. Here, in this breath, in this second, there is no imagined future, only what is. Carry this thought with you. Fear is often a shadow, not a substance. It cannot harm you unless you grant it power. It cannot dictate your life unless you hand it the pen. And when you see it clearly for what it is, you can step forward, not without fear, but with courage stronger than fear. This is what the Stoics teach us, that fear is not a master, but a messenger, that its illusions can be dissolved with presence, and that we in every moment have the power to return to what is real. As we move forward, we will begin to explore the practical ways the Stoics taught us to overcome fear and anxiety. We will see how their daily practices, visualizations, reflections, and mindful exercises transform fear from a chain into a stepping stone. But before we arrive there, let us pause once more. Remember that fear is not the reality, it is the story. And like any story, it can be rewritten. And this brings us to a vital question. If fear is often an illusion, and if the present moment holds our true power, then how can we actively train ourselves to face fear and anxiety with strength? The Stoics did not stop at abstract ideas. They gave us practices, tools, and exercises that can be woven into daily life. These practices are not complicated rituals. They are simple, repeatable habits that strengthen the mind and calm the heart. Let's explore them together. The first and most essential practice is the dichotomy of control. Imagine dividing the entire world into two categories, the things you can control and the things you cannot. The Stoics taught us that our energy should be spent only on the first category, our thoughts, our actions, our choices. Everything else, no matter how tempting it is to fight against, lies outside our command. Think of a storm. You cannot control the wind, the rain, or the thunder, but you can choose how you respond, to panic, to resist, or to stay calm and take shelter. Life constantly throws storms at us. The practice of the dichotomy of control helps us focus on building an inner shelter, one that no storm can destroy. Another powerful practice is negative visualization, also known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. At first, it might sound dark, imagining the difficulties, setbacks, and losses that might come your way, but in truth, it is liberating. When you visualize possible hardships in advance, you prepare your mind. They no longer strike you as shocking or unbearable. Picture yourself about to give an important speech. Instead of clinging to the hope that nothing will go wrong, a Stoic imagines small disruptions, a microphone breaking, a restless audience forgetting a line. By rehearsing these possibilities, the mind becomes calm and ready. And when reality arrives, you face it with steady composure. Equally important is the practice of Amor Fati, which means love of fate. It is the art of embracing whatever life brings, not as an enemy but as a companion. The Stoics believe that every obstacle, every twist of fate, is part of life's larger design. To resist it only breeds bitterness, but to embrace it transforms suffering into strength. Imagine you planned a long hike, and suddenly it begins to rain. A non-Stoic might curse the weather and abandon the day in frustration. But a Stoic, practicing Amor Fati, welcomes the rain as part of the experience, seeing beauty even in the unexpected path. With this mindset, life itself becomes lighter. Nothing is wasted, not even the difficulties. The Stoics also grounded their philosophy in simple daily exercises. Mindful breathing, for instance, is a practice as old as humanity. When fear strikes, notice your breath. Slow it down. Feel the rhythm of your chest rising and falling. This small act pulls you back from anxious spirals and anchors you in the present. Alongside this, journaling was a common Stoic habit. Marcus Aurelius himself kept a journal not to be published, but as a private exercise to remind himself of what truly matters. Writing down your worries, your fears, and your reflections is like clearing a fog from the mind. The act of putting thoughts into words gives them shape, and once they have shape, they lose much of their power to overwhelm. These practices are not meant to be performed once and forgotten. They are daily companions, habits to cultivate, small steps that gradually transform how we see the world. Fear and anxiety will still visit us, but with these tools, we meet them not as helpless victims, but as calm and prepared travelers. And now that we've walked through these Stoic practices, perhaps the next step is to see how they look in real lives, both in the stories of the ancients who lived through hardship and in the experiences of people today who face modern challenges with the same timeless wisdom. That is where our journey continues. And so, having learned these practices, the natural question becomes, how do they unfold in the real world? Wisdom is most powerful when it is lived, not merely spoken. To see Stoicism in action, let us turn to stories, some drawn from ancient times, and others rooted in our modern world. These stories reveal how the principles we've discussed can guide people through storms, both great and small. One of the most striking examples is Epictetus. Born into slavery, he endured hardship most of us can barely imagine. His body was frail, and he lived under the command of others. And yet he discovered that no one could ever enslave his mind. Epictetus realized that freedom was not about chains or status, it was about mastering one's thoughts and choices. Even when his master's cruelty left him injured for life, Epictetus refused to let anger or despair rule him. Instead, he taught himself and others that true strength comes from within. His story shows us that even in the harshest circumstances, the dichotomy of control is not just a theory, it is a lifeline. Another ancient example comes from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. Imagine his reality: endless wars at the borders, political betrayal in the Senate, plagues sweeping through the population. He could have easily been consumed by fear and bitterness, but Marcus returned night after night to his private journal, reminding himself to focus only on what was within his power: the justice of his actions, the discipline of his mind, the service he owed to humanity. His writings were not polished speeches for the public. They were private reminders to stay calm amidst chaos. His life demonstrates how Stoicism is not an escape from responsibility, but a guide to carry it with grace. Now let's bring this into modern life. Consider the common fear of public speaking. Imagine standing before a crowd, your heart racing, your palms sweating, your mind clouded with anxiety. Many of us know this fear intimately, but now imagine approaching it as a Stoic would. Instead of resisting the fear, you acknowledge it. You tell yourself, this is my body preparing me for action. You remind yourself that the outcome, the applause, the criticism, the opinions of others is beyond your control. What is in your control is the clarity of your words, the honesty of your effort, the courage to show up. With this shift in perspective, fear transforms into energy. The speech is no longer a battlefield, but a chance to practice inner strength. Another modern example is financial worry. Countless people today live under the shadow of uncertainty, job loss, debts, or the fear of not having enough. These worries can consume the mind, filling every moment with dread. But a Stoic approach helps us to step back. We ask ourselves, what can I control here? Perhaps it is my spending habits, my effort to learn new skills, my attitude toward simplicity. And what cannot I control? The larger economy, sudden market changes, or the opinions of others. By focusing on what lies within reach, the mind finds clarity. By accepting what is beyond reach, the heart finds peace. In this way, financial anxiety becomes less of a crushing weight and more of a teacher, guiding us toward resilience and self-reliance. We can see this in the story of a man named James, a small business owner during a global crisis. Overnight, his shop was forced to close. His income vanished, and the bills continued to pile up. At first, despair threatened to take over. But he remembered a principle he once read: control what you can, release what you cannot. He focused on restructuring his business, reaching customers online, and simplifying his lifestyle. The external crisis remained, but internally he grew calmer. He could not stop the storm, but he could learn to sail within it. Another example is the fear of health struggles. Imagine someone waiting for the results of a medical test, caught in the uncertainty of what if. The days feel heavy, the nights restless. But a Stoic perspective helps ease the burden. The outcome of this test, one might say, is not in my hands. What is in my hands is how I live today, how I care for my body, how I speak to my loved ones, how I meet this moment with dignity. This shift does not erase the difficulty, but it restores agency. Instead of drowning in fear, the person begins to live fully in the present moment, regardless of what tomorrow may bring. We also see Stoic wisdom in the lives of athletes and performers. Consider a runner about to compete in a championship race. The anxiety before stepping onto the track can be overwhelming, the pressure to succeed, the fear of failure. But the Stoic athlete reframes the moment. They remind themselves that they cannot control the crowd's cheers or the final outcome. What they can control is their effort, their focus, their will to give everything they have. Win or lose, the practice of Stoicism allows them to walk away with peace, knowing they lived their values. Even in everyday parenting, Stoicism plays a role. A mother, for example, may worry endlessly about her child's future, whether they will succeed, whether they will make good choices, whether they will be safe. These fears can spiral into constant anxiety. But a Stoic parent learns to separate what is in her control from what is not. She cannot decide her child's destiny, but she can guide them, love them, and model resilience. In doing so, she plants seeds of strength in her child's heart. The worry never disappears completely, but it no longer rules her life. The beauty of Stoic wisdom is that it applies across every era, every culture, and every struggle. Whether it is Epictetus in chains, Marcus Aurelius in his palace, or a modern student trembling before a class presentation, or a parent quietly carrying the burden of bills, Stoicism reminds us that the mind is our most powerful ally, and each story, ancient or modern, is a reminder that we are not alone. Others have walked this path before us, and they have left us footprints to follow. With these stories in our hearts, we can see how fear and anxiety are not invincible forces. They can be understood, reframed, and even transformed. And this leads us naturally to our next step, learning how anxiety itself can become a source of strength, a guide that points us toward what we value most deeply. Think for a moment about the nature of anxiety. We often see it only as an enemy, something to silence or suppress. But what if it is also a teacher? Anxiety often rises where we care the most. We feel anxious before a speech because we value our voice being heard. We feel anxious about loved ones because they matter deeply to us. Anxiety, then, is not always a curse. It is a signal. It shows us where our heart is invested, where our values are alive. The Stoic approach is not to erase this feeling, but to listen to it with clarity, to ask, what is this anxiety pointing me toward? And once we see it clearly, we can transform it. The Stoics remind us that resilience is born from this transformation. Epictetus once said that every trial is an opportunity to practice virtue. Anxiety about a challenge can become preparation. The nervous energy before a test can become motivation to study. The fear before a journey can become careful planning. Even grief, the most profound of anxieties, can become a reminder to cherish the present moment. Each time we reframe anxiety in this way, we turn what once weakened us into a force that strengthens us. This is where courage enters. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act in spite of fear. The Stoics did not promise a life free of emotion. They promised a life where emotion no longer controls us. To feel anxiety and yet to move forward with dignity, to live in accordance with reason and virtue. That is the Stoics' version of bravery. Anxiety becomes fuel, pushing us to step into the very spaces where growth and meaning live. Another profound tool the Stoics gave us is the practice of memento mori, the remembrance of mortality. At first, this may sound grim, but in truth, it is deeply liberating. When we remember that life is fleeting, fear of trivial matters dissolves. The small anxieties that once consumed us, embarrassment, failure, the opinions of others, lose their grip. What remains is clarity. We see what truly matters, living with integrity, loving those around us, and making the most of the time we have. Anxiety shrinks in the presence of this vast perspective, and peace quietly takes its place. And so we arrive at a calm reflection. Fear and anxiety will always exist in some form, but they do not have to rule us. Through the Stoic lens, we learn control over our judgments, acceptance of fate, perspective in the face of hardship, and the daily practice of reflection and clarity. These are not abstract ideas, but living tools tested by centuries of human struggle. They are available to us now, just as they were to the ancients. When you begin to live with this wisdom, fear loses its power. Anxiety no longer paralyzes. Instead, it guides, teaches, and transforms you into someone stronger, calmer, and more alive. The peace you seek is not far away, it has always been within you. And if these reflections have spoken to you, I invite you to continue walking this path with me. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how Stoic wisdom touches your own life. And join this growing circle of seekers by subscribing. Together, we can keep learning, reflecting, and finding the calm strength that has always been waiting for us.